From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello again. Welcome to another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. Glad to have you with us today. We're going to do something a little bit different today because we have one guest on our program today, and a very special one it is. Ben Joravsky is joining us. Ben's been on the show a couple of times, including the very first show right after Labor Day, and we're glad to have you back again. You know, it's our sort of Christmas, New Year's, a little bit more relaxed while everybody else is running around like crazy kind of show. So we thought it would be a good time to sit back and kind of look a little bit at what's happened in the last year, what's happened in the 20 years of the Daley administration. And I just kind of figured the best guy to sit and chat for a while would be Ben Joravsky. So Ben, glad to have you.
Thanks, Ken.
You know, I don't really know where to begin. There's so many things to talk about, but I thought we would talk about education. Last couple of weeks there have been some mayoral forums, and the focus seems very quickly to get down to education issues. And there was this thing they did over at the CTU a couple of nights ago where they asked all the candidates to rate the schools, and no less than Gary Chico, who was once the CEO, gave it I think he gave it a C minus or a D or something. I can't remember. Yeah. So it's very in to rate the schools low at this point if you're running for mayor. But, you know, this guy Daley, I mean, he sort of invented the idea of taking over the schools 15 years ago. So what's going on? Where do you pick that story up?
Well, it sort of fits in to my general theme on these things, Ken, which is that really nothing has changed. I think this is an echo of something I said on our first show, or your first show. I've been here so many times, I'm treated like it's my own. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
Take the coffee cup when I leave. But no, the first show, it's just I think that by and large, and basically, the school system remains essentially as it was when Daley took office, and that's a division between haves and have-nots, and based largely on income and class. And I'm probably very tolerant of Mayor Daley on this score, because I don't know how any one person can overcome these gigantic gulfs. I think what Daley has successfully done throughout his 20-year tenure is give the appearance that he's somehow significantly changing a system when he's not significantly changing it at all. And the proof, of course, is now that he's leaving, all the people who want to replace him are saying the system needs to be improved and we want to improve it. And you're right to call on Chico. It's beyond irony that Gary Chico, who was Mayor Daley's school board president for 6 crucial years there in the late 90s, early O's, is saying, well, that was the only glory years of the entire school system. It was horrible before we took over, and now it's horrible again. And so I want to bring it back to its
It's been interesting to watch the way he finesses that you know, I mean, and I think it is demonstrably true that during his years, 400 schools were rebuilt. There were some, I don't know, 60 brand new schools built. Those were glory days for the physical plant of the school system. And then he left, and some of his people left, and things began a slow deterioration to the point that we are at now, and that's why we need to...
Right. Well, that's his spin on things.
Yeah.
I strongly would disagree, having lived through those years. And you know, it's a curious thing about the schools. Again, Mayor Daley learned early on, I was just reading some old clips, that if he was going to be held accountable for what happened in the schools, he wanted to completely control them. And he learned that within his first year of office, where he had an interim board, which he controlled. This is ancient history, but Bill Singer, the old alderman, was on the board. I believe he may have been the president of it. Anyway, and they negotiated a 3-year deal with the teachers in which they gave the teachers a 21% raise. It was a raise that the school system couldn't afford. And so the subsequent boards, which were not controlled literally by Daley, he had a share with a nominating commission. The members were constantly wrestling with trying to make good on what was Mayor Daley's promise to the teachers for a raise and balance their books. And Daley got so frustrated by this this show every year where they would come down to the wire. There would be the threat of a strike, drastic cuts. He would gather the teachers with the school board officials in his office, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to take complete control.
I'm tired of this.
I'm tired of this."
Right.
So I just find it interesting. Well, he was really kind of controlling the schools all along. He just it was like he drew a line in the sand and said, "From here on out, I am now really in charge."
But it was dramatic, though. I mean, it was a dramatic break from the past, as you say, at least in public perception.
Yes,
that,
exactly.
oh,
Public
wow,
perception.
he's taking over. Yeah. Very much the same as what he did with the CHA. That it's like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm taking over. I'm going to make the decisions.
The CHA, the Chicago House Authority. Yeah, he tore it down.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
All right. Yeah. Now that I believe that's his single greatest achievement as mayor, for better or for worse. We could argue that point, whether it is better or whether it is worse. But nothing has had the impact on the city, I think, as tearing down the high rises in terms of the gentrification of neighborhoods, in terms of moving poor people out of neighborhoods, in terms of bringing crime to other neighborhoods. But property values have gone up in the areas around where the high rises were torn down, particularly in the north side of Cabrini Green. So I think I don't know if he would accept this as his greatest achievement, but that's how I view it.
It's particularly interesting in light of the Tribune quote they got yesterday, where he said that the greatest mayor in Chicago history was his father, who is still the longest serving mayor for a few more days.
Yeah.
And that when you look at, particularly through the lens of the CHA, that his father built most of those high rises and he tore most of them down.
Yes, and his father built those high rises in the context of a city that was in many ways much different than it is today. The reality was that those high rises were constructed largely to avoid integration. There was a great influx of black people coming to Chicago from the South. It was what they call the Second Great Migration. It happened post-World War II. And there was tremendous resistance in white neighborhoods to having even one or two black families move in. So to avoid that sort of turmoil and to find housing for this great influx of black people that were coming to Chicago, he built these high-rise
warehouses, as they were often called at the time.
It worked well for the black allies he had in the Democratic machine, because these warehouses contained all the black voters, so their power base was preserved to a degree. But of course, they were disasters.
You know, it just sparked a brain cell that in the process of doing some research for a story I was doing years and years ago, I went back through some old Tribune archives, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the columnist's name now, but it was written in 1963, and it was 2 or 3 days after the first of the Robert Taylor homes had opened to great fanfare, these wonderful places. And it was one of the most prescient pieces of writing I've ever seen. This guy was a white columnist, and he had been there, and he said, there's no way these elevators are going to make it through the winter. They're all in these wire cages. This place looks more like a minimum security prison. There's going to be crime here. There's going, you know, this is just bad policy. It's bad design. It's bad urban planning. It's everything is wrong with this. And I have no idea how much longer he lived, whether he lived to see that.
Well, that's interesting. I wish you could remember his name. We give him a little credit. But absolutely. And again, as I said before, they were built for all the wrong reasons. And to perpetuate segregation because the city couldn't handle integration. So, but the current mayor didn't really have that problem. The demographics had changed. There was not an influx of blacks into Chicago. In fact, there was a movement out. And there was a greater, there was movement in of white people, and there was a growth in Hispanic population. So that sort of racial tension that his father had to deal with, which was very real and very prevalent throughout at least the last 10, 15 years of Daley One's regime. Baby Daley, as I call him, didn't have to deal with that. And so he had some luxuries and privileges that his father did not have.
He also had an economic pressure that his father couldn't have imagined in the revaluation of the land around Division and all of where Cabrini is.
Well, yeah,
who could have imagined that that would be the new center of the city?
Absolutely, and that's the point I was making a little earlier. When you tore down the high-rises, when you scattered the people out of those neighborhoods, there was a great increase in value, and he was the beneficiary, Mayor Daley, of a tremendous property boom. It was a bubble, actually, but it lasted for about 10 years, and he was able to finance all sorts of spectacular.
During the boom years of the Daley administration, it was pretty remarkable to see. I often referred to the mayor kind of riding around the city sprinkling fairy dust everywhere.
Yes.
It's like, I think we will transform this neighborhood.
You're actually very funny on this. I know you won't share it with the listeners, but you're very good on this. I've seen you. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Yeah.
And just kind of like, yes, and I think we'll build something over here.
Yeah.
And a library pops up.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, those days are long gone now.
Yeah, those days are long gone, and so it's. I think it's. When Chico, going back to Chico, what he was saying at Peyton High School the other day about how there was those glory 6 years when he was there. Well, yeah, of course, it was financed by this boom in the economy in the real estate industry, and it was also financed to a degree by promising teachers a hike in their pension payments that, of course, they never delivered, so they just used that money for other things. So it's actually not as glory days as we think, and in fact, we're paying the bills right now.
Yeah,
to a degree.
It's just this is a complete non sequitur, but I was coming to the studios here today and driving down Madison Street and looking at how all the planters are kind of cracked and the streets, all the asphalt is coming up, and the beautiful decorative lights are all kind of rusting away at the bases. And I was thinking there's almost an analogy here for those years of the Daley years, because this was all done for the Democratic Convention. That entire strip was done out there, and you just got to say, in 1996, I mean, it just looked beautiful.
Yes.
And here we are 15 years later, and like all the rest of us, we're starting to get a little rusty.
Well, you know what, Ken, it really worked well for him, for Daley, because I've heard so many times people say the city looks beautiful, never looked more beautiful, and I think that that sense of pride that people took with the change and appearance of certain key neighborhoods, by the way, these are just these are just the areas that the tourists are going to see, but nonetheless, there's a very important parts of Chicago. I think that got him through many years of scandals that might have defeated him under normal circumstances.
I guess we're having an interesting conversation here about the mayor and perhaps even the legacy of the mayor. But one of those legacies has to be something that you've written about extensively and has kind of made you sort of a minor star in Chicago journalism circles, tax increment financing. And I do think that it's important to say that it's really worth going through the reader archives and looking at some of the things over the last 20 years that Ben has worked on. It's an absolutely admirable body of work, and I'm proud to say that I know you. A very interesting thing happened. We're talking about these mayoral forums. The one at Peyton the other night, Andy Shaw was hosting that, and he made the following comment. I want to play you this clip. Hold on. Here's what Andy Shaw had to say the other night on December 15th.
Let's ask about something that's become well known in recent years, although a decade ago I never would have used the word in a news story because they would have laughed me out of the newsroom, the word TIF, which all of a sudden used to mean a fight, right? Now we know it's tax increment financing. We know it's supposed to be an economic development tool. We also know through some diligent reporting over the years that it does drain a lot of money from government entities because it sets it aside for future use. This isn't an evening for a TIF 101, but everybody up here understands that. So my question is, knowing full well that hundreds of millions of dollars over the years have been held in abeyance and not given to the school district, what do you change in TIF policy as mayor to try to direct more of that money toward education, if anything?
And perhaps the most instructive and informative moment after his asking that question was that he then put it to all the candidates, who proceeded to say, oh yeah, this whole TIF thing has got to go, it's got to be broken up. Where were these people 5 years ago?
Well, yeah, no, that's my thoughts exactly. Well, I think it's a sign of progress that the question was even asked, and it's also a sign of failure that it's a sign of progress that the question was asked, because one of the great mysteries about the whole TIF program is why there's a reluctance on the part of the mainstream media and the public at large to even discuss this program. I mean, as anyone will tell you, in fact, Gary Chico said it at that debate. He was the one candidate who was defending the TIF program.
And I actually admired him for that, by the way. I thought it would have been a cheap shot for him just to have jumped on board, but he did defend it.
He defended it. It was a defense that really it's not a non-defense defense, but nonetheless he tried it. But the point is that as Chico was saying, and as Mayor Daley has said, this is the only pot of money that we have. And so why people don't spend more time investigating it, how it works, how it's divided, and I'll never really understand. So I appreciate Andy Shaw asking that question. It was like a great moment in my life as a TIF fanatic.
We'll give you that tape when you leave, just as a little present for you.
Yeah, and you notice, Andy, and God bless you, I love you dearly, but he's kind of like apologized for asking the question. Well, I don't really want to ask this question.
Nobody wants to talk about this,
but can we get through with this?
We have to talk about it. Yeah. I'm jumping all over the place because I just feel very jealous of the few moments we have here. But going back to education for a moment, you've written so much about education, and we had Karen Lewis, the head of the teachers union, on the show with you once. Have you seen that movie, Waiting for Superman?
No, I've not seen it, but I've read it.
Well,
so much about it.
I just happened to see it a few days ago, and it's I've got lots of theories about it, and it's not worth wasting time telling you that. But one thing that it does leave you with is this notion that there is a rising tide of resentment in the United States against teachers' unions and against teachers. I find the whole thing to be kind of frightening myself.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you have a sense of whether the CTU at some point is going to be ready to sort of come to the table on this issue. That I think a lot of the mayoral candidates are saying this, a lot of the editorialists are saying this, that you can't defend continuing to support the worst teachers. Ron Huberman, we haven't even mentioned him so far, but Ron Huberman, who was only around for about a day or two
at the Board of Ed.
At the Board of Ed, made a name for himself talking about that very thing, about we've got to get the worst of the teachers out of here.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with that?
Well, first of all, my attitude toward that whole issue is similar to my attitude about the way we've discussed budgets. We discuss budgets without talking about the TIF, so we're not really talking about something that's true and substantive. We're talking about something that's made up. The reality is that under Huberman, there virtually was no tenure rights for public school teachers. The 1,300 of them were fired in the last budget cycle without rhyme or reason, and with no recourse to get their jobs back. So if I'm Karen Lewis, I would be fighting just to keep the jobs that I have now. In terms of the larger issue of, well, what do we do to attract higher quality teachers? Then you have, it's such a difficult thing to really get at. I mean, I don't even know what do you mean by higher quality teachers?
How do you determine who's high quality and who's not?
One thing I did appreciate from the candidates at Peyton that we're referring to, of course, Rahm Emanuel was not there, unfortunately. But
hasn't been to any of them.
It hasn't been at Meeks and Carol Mosley Braun and Gary Chico and Miguel DeValle. I think every single one of them said, I don't want to scapegoat teachers. I don't want to scapegoat teachers. So I think that shows at least that they're not just jumping aboard a bandwagon without any kind of concept of what the real issues are.
But nevertheless, it's still out there, though. I mean, there's still this idea out there that the problem is teachers. They're expensive. They're intransigent. They can't be dealt with. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, I know, and I think it's very bizarre. I mean, on one hand, I mean, what do you want? You want teachers to be captive to their principals, to their community? I mean, do you think that there's just this abundance of people who want to be teachers so that you could just freely fire everybody and there's just going to be a never-ending supply? Or they pay them so well as it is that I just find it such a curious issue, and you're absolutely correct. It's an issue that's out there. It's an issue. It's almost as though the Democratic Party has taken this issue from the Republicans as though it is prove to the rest of the world we're tough on our biggest supporters, and to me it's not really lodged in reality or anchored, and that's why I compare it to the budget program. We're talking about something that's not true. It's an illusion, and let's take time to take a look at the wider picture, what's really going on here. So I don't know how we're going to where we're going to emerge with this.
So what do you make of your president, Chicago's president?
Well,
as we speak, he's about to pass the New START treaty. Don't ask, don't tell passed?
Yes, and he gave the tax, he extended the Bush tax credits a couple of years. He's everything I expected, actually, because I watched him from afar. I don't know him, but I watched him from afar as he rose through the ranks. He was always accommodationist. He was always very conciliatory. He was always avoiding fights. He was always trying to find whatever kernel of common bond there was between him and people who didn't agree with him at all. He managed to avoid any kind of substantive debate with Mayor Daley. He pretty much pretended as though the mayor didn't exist. So it's pretty much what I expected, and yet I voted for him anyway, Ken. So the problem is with me, as always.
No, it's been very interesting to watch it's kind of more of a media story than anything, but it's so interesting to watch how a week ago he was the GOAT. He was absolutely, there's not a chance he's going to get reelected. It's over for him, and now he's the comeback kid within 48 hours, and everybody is jumping on this thing. This guy's brilliant. He's playing three-dimensional chess. He's five steps ahead
of everybody else.
Of the Republicans.
Yeah, all he did was give a huge tax break, by the way. I mean, maybe that's why he's getting all this great press coverage. So no, I don't know. I know. I think he irritated his base. There was a column somebody wrote, it doesn't matter what he does to liberals and lefties because they have no choice but to vote for him anyway. And so.
So Rahm Emanuel.
Rahm Emanuel.
What about Rahm Emanuel?
Okay. All right. Let's wrap this up. I think this show's going a little too long. It's time for ward issues with Alderman Ed Bus.
You're Alderman Ed Bus.
You grab this table.
Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on a moment, please. Didn't we just speak?
Get off the stage.
Alderman, I'm really sorry, but we're in the middle of a discussion here.
Well, I hear what you guys are talking about. Alderman Ed Bus, 53rd Ward, City of Chicago. How you doing?
And candidate for mayor. I
am running for mayor. Right. I'm glad you brought that up. Someone should break that up.
We were just talking about Rahm Emanuel, but So we were supposed to have you on in a couple of weeks.
Well, I host my show Ward Issues right after this, where I take calls about what's going on in the 53rd Ward, potholes, anything to do with any tuck pointing problems. If we're having any problems with garbage pickup, that's what kind of talk show I do.
I must say I'm a fan of yours.
Thank you.
I think that
I don't get a glass of water or anything like that?
Well, we weren't planning on it. You can have mine.
I'm not drinking Joravsky's water, I'll tell you that right now. It works for the reader, if you know what I mean. Where's that camera? Okay.
Alderman, tell me something. How has it happened that you're not opposed in this election? We were talking earlier about how very few aldermen these days are unopposed. There's 350 people running for alderman, and you don't get any opposition.
Listen. I've been alderman for like 40 to 45 years.
Do you remember? Is it 40?
I will say I'm the only alderman on record that has voted for Mayor Daley's initiatives, anything that goes through city council, every single time. And people respect that. And that's why no one runs against me in the 53rd, because I take care of business.
Well, I know that you always end your show by saying, and don't forget to vote for Mayor Daley.
Don't forget to vote for Mayor Daley.
Right. Now, what are you going to do now?
Don't forget to remember Mayor Daley. That's what I'm going to say. And here's why. I'm also have an ordinance that's in right now that instead of the Pledge of Allegiance or a moment of silence, we're going to do a Pledge to Daley.
Which one?
The new one. The Daley family. Why don't we just say the Daley family?
His grandkids
How
do you feel about what Mayor Daley said yesterday? He said that his father was the greatest mayor who ever lived.
Well, that's a family issue. That's something for them. But anyone named Daley is good by me and my family. They've done me well. I spend my time doing everything that they say. I mean, I'm subservient in a good way. I'm the kind of alderman that comes in and says, You are the leader,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I make sure it gets through.
Uh-huh.
And that's, I'm not paid to think. I'm not paid $110,000 to think.
Yeah.
It's my job to make sure
But
that Mayor Daley
your
looks
constituents really do support you. I
That's
mean,
right.
you
And
have very high
they want me to be mayor. And the reason they want me to be mayor is because I'm running on the platform, keep it like it was. Think about that.
Yeah.
Keep it like it was. And
Like it
no
was.
phones.
Like it was.
No phones.
Right, don't use any
I'm
phone-
not some stupid politician who uses a phone on official business. That's when, we'll go in the parking lot or we'll go to a park district, take care of business there. But you're not going to catch me getting tapped on some phone.
Keep it like it was when?
That is debatable. Keep it like it was, Chicago. Keep it like it was.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? We're having a very heartfelt discussion here about
boring.
It
It was a boring conversation you guys were having. You guys don't know anything. You journalists think you know everything.
tax increment finance.
Well, I don't know anything about tax increment. All I know is that Daley says to do it, and I do it. And then you write a 19-page story about it. You know, I mean, I'll tell you right now. If it's good for Mayor Daley, it's good for the city. And you know what? If it takes that some businesses don't get taxes so we can get some flowers or a nice new park or a campaign war chest for the next time around, I think that's fine. I have no problem with that.
There were some constituents in your ward over by Western Avenue who were complaining that they're not getting the kind of that it's disparate service. That
Who told you that?
some of your constituents get treated better than others.
Name your source.
Well, I don't think I need to do that. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think
okay. Well,
I mean,
you know
because
what? That person's full of it.
Yeah, and if I give you their number, then what will you do?
I guarantee everybody in the 53rd Ward loves me, is taken care of. I'm not going to let you guys sandbag me here on this talk show. Trust me. Everybody in the ward's getting their garbage picked up. I got a couple bags of Quickcrete in the back of my Cutlass, so if I see a pothole, I fill it myself. I know the right ratio between water and concrete. You know, I'm making sure in the schools, in the 53rd Ward, here's my school plan. You know, at Dennis Farina Middle School, we have a plan where we don't have any science or math. No.
Why is that?
Because computers do it all now, so who cares, right?
So you can save time.
You save time, you save money, you cut about an hour and a half off, and you know what? Everyone has fun. They go play in the park like we did in the 50s. Big deal.
Ben, do you have any questions?
Yeah,
for
Alderman,
the
you're
mayor?
running for mayor now? Did you make the ballot?
In my ward, you don't need to make a ballot.
But you're running citywide,
Yeah, I'm on the
right?
ballot. Of course I'm on the ballot. Jason took care of that. You take care of that, right? I'm on the ballot. I'm on the ballot. I don't need to do all this stuff. All this song and dance you see on the TVs for you guys so you guys can keep getting paychecks. I don't need to be on I'm on the ballot, right? I'm on the ballot. Don't worry about
So
it.
you're one of the people challenging Rahm Emanuel?
I like to give away my sources, you know. I mean, he didn't live here.
In the event that Rahm Emanuel becomes mayor, as it looks like he very well might, will you be able to work with Mayor Emanuel the same way you've been able to work with the
Rahm
Daleys?
Emanuel owes a lot to Ed Bus. That's as much as I'm going to say. He owes a lot. I mean, when he was coming up, you know, I was the one who said, give this kid a chance. Yeah, he's got a weird name. I mean, who calls himself Rahm? And I talked to some people. I got him in. You know, I made sure when he was running for Congress that a couple of my guys, you know, helped him out.
You have a lot of people who work for the water department, right?
I do. You know, I mean, as I say about the water department, it's the best gig in Chicago. You get paid a ton of money, and all you do is play cards.
Right,
you know, it's a good gig. It's a good gig. A couple of my guys there, you know, owed me a favor. So Rahm, trust me, Rahm and I, we'll be fine.
Well, Alderman, I'm sorry that we only had a couple of minutes with you because it's time for us to go now. But thank you very much for dropping by. We hope we'll see you again sometime.
Well,
Best of luck.
It was nice to
Alderman.
meet you too. I only have a file. I only know your name because I see it in all the paperwork that the politicians have saying, "Don't talk to this guy."
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you, I don't
works
know
very
you.
well.
But I will say this: vote for Mayor
Nobody
Daley. Even if he's not running, just vote for Mayor Daley and vote for Bus.
I'm Ken Davis. That was an unsolicited testimonial there, and you've been watching Chicago Newsroom, as you always do, right here on Channel 19. You can find us here on cable, but you can also see us on Blip TV, and you can subscribe in iTunes. Ben Joravsky from The Reader, thank you so much for coming by. Alderman Ed Bus, well, you know,
around for ward issues.
it's coming up next here on CAN TV. See you next time.
Pleasure.